Hey, Bastish B here for 64K and welcome to episode 2 of Compilation Nation. Hey and welcome back. If you never saw the first episode, then basically what the show is about is covering compilations of games released by companies. You know, big collections, whether it's from brand new ones from now, or whether it's compilations from the 90s or 80s or something like that. We're going to cover all of them. So today's compilation is the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection on the Switch. I've been waiting for this one for so long, I just had to get it. It features 24 arcade classics from SNK. Most of these games have never been released in any sort of home state, whether it be like on consoles or computers or anything. So there's a lot of awesome games, a lot of games that I'd never played before, which was really cool for me. So there are 24 games here, and that doesn't even include the variations in the games. And when I say that, there's also console versions of a bunch of the games in this list, and those console versions are quite a bit different from the arcade. So bear in mind, in that total I'm including all the DLC. There's 2 DLC packs with tons of other games. The reason I'm including them is because the DLC packs are free, so I'm including them in this review. Don't forget to go and download them. So let's get this compilation started by checking out the menus and the options. Here's the main page. You got arcade, museum, and options. So let's take a look first at the museum. SNK Complete Works, Complete History, bonus features, and game soundtracks. So let's start with the Complete Works. This is every single game that SNK has ever released, up until the latest game on this compilation. As you can see, you can go into any of these and see lots more information about each game. Let's go for Tank 3, for example. Here's the original arcade flyer. If you click more, you can find out more information about the game. There are many pages for each game, giving a lot of extra info. Let's go to the bonus features. This has got advertising, behind the scenes stuff, newsletters, arcade guidebooks. Have a look at this. This is an arcade guidebook for Athena. You can scroll along here. You can check it's got the instruction manual for the arcade game. And let's go to the soundtracks. It's got most of the soundtracks for most of the games, not everything though. So let's check out Akari 3 here, give it a little sample. And then over here you can see you can switch between American and Japanese versions of games, which is pretty cool. You also can go to game options and change the difficulty and a whole bunch of other things on these original arcade games. Also, certain games have arcade and console versions, which is very cool. Okay, now let's check out the games. We're going to check out all 24 games, all the DLC, plus all the variations of each game. Let's check it out. Alpha Mission is a vertically scrolling arcade shoot 'em up from 1985 that is similar to Namco's Xevious, with regular and ground attacks but with a much faster pace. Alpha Mission, the NES version, is mostly the same but is a bit more of a remix than a direct port. It's a decent shooter but has some really grating sound effects. Athena, the 1986 arcade game, is a side-scrolling platform adventure game that may have been the inspiration for Sega's Wonder Boy in Monsterland, which came out a year later. It's a great game, by the way. Athena, the NES version, is a pretty good variation on the arcade. It captures the look and feel pretty well and is a fun platform adventure game to try out. Beastbusters is a 1989 light gun arcade kill fest that is like Operation Wolf with zombies. It's relentless fun with great graphics. I love it. Bermuda Triangle, the 1987 vertical scrolling shoot 'em up, is a fast-paced romp with frantic gameplay and nice chunky graphics. It's very satisfying. Chopper 1 is a 1988 arcade game and is another scrolling shoot 'em up that is a fun blast without being anything too memorable. Crystalis is a 1990 NES action RPG similar in style to Zelda but much deeper, and honestly I feel it's better. A must play if you like this genre of gaming. Fantasy is a super weird hybrid arcade game from 1981 that I never even knew existed. Did Nintendo steal multiple games from this? It predates both Donkey Kong and Balloon Fight. Guerrilla War the arcade game is a 1987 top-down run and gun. Big colourful graphics and sound make it a fun variation on everything they did with Ikari Warriors. Guerrilla War the NES version is again a variation on the arcade game with much smaller graphics and slightly different gameplay. It's decent but way too difficult. Ikari Warriors the 1986 run and gun classic is a must-play. Awesome crazy action, jump in a tank and really go nuts, and it's super fun in 2-player. Ikari Warriors the NES version is really sluggish to control. The music and sound effects are grating to say the least. Play the 8-bit UK Commodore 64 version instead. Ikari Warriors 2 Victory Road is a weird arcade sequel that sets everything in a sci-fi fantasy setting for some bizarre reason. Gameplay is okay, but it's a bit tricky to control. Ikari Warriors 2 Victory Road on the NES is another loose interpretation. Much bigger, chunkier graphics. It actually controls quite well, but the difficulty is maddening. Ikari 3 The Rescue and the third game in the series was released in 1989. It changes the style again with massive, almost scrolling beat-em-up type gameplay with some fun run and gun sections. It's quite fun to play, but the original is still the best. Ikari 3 on the NES is again a variation on the arcade game that does a good job considering the NES's limits, but it can be real cheap and difficult. Iron Tank on the NES is a decent scrolling running gun in a tank that plays a lot like the tank sections in Ikari Warriors. Munch Mobile is a 1983 arcade release that I'd never seen before. It's bizarre to say the least, but it is kinda strangely addicting. Ozma Wars is a 1979 arcade game and is a variation of sorts on Space Invaders. I really love the Spectrum style graphics and the retro sound effects. Paddle Mania is a 1988 arcade release that is a mixture of Pong and Windjammers. If you like those two, you're gonna love it. POW was one of my favorite SNK arcade games as a kid. It's a scrolling beat-em-up action mixed with some run and gun gameplay, with cool sound effects and graphics. POW on the NES is a slight variation on the arcade and does a decent job, but some infuriatingly difficult sections await you. Prehistoric Owl is a 1989 horizontal shoot-em-up that is visually awesome and so much fun to play. This is a must-try on the collection. Psycho Soldier is a pretty cool arcade side-scrolling hack and slash. It has great graphics and style and is the sequel to Athena. SAR or Search and Rescue, a 1989 arcade running gun, is a fun game with nice chunky graphics and relentless killing pace. Check it out. Sasuke vs. Commander is a 1980 arcade romp that reminds me a lot of the arcade game Satan's Hollow, but just with some extra boss battles. Street Smart is a 1989 versus beat 'em up that's okay, I guess. This game came out just before versus games really came into their own, and it really shows it. Time Soldiers is another run and gun arcade romp that plays a bit like Ikari Warriors, just with the really annoying sound effects. TNK3 or Tank 3 is a cool tank kill 'em up game that's fun to play. Iron Tank, the NES game we saw earlier, is an expanded version of this arcade game. Vanguard is a really cool, unique 1981 arcade game with fast, multi-directional gameplay and great sound. This game really impressed me with its speed and gameplay. And finally, World Wars The Last Game is a 1987 vertical shooter that's pretty standard in all respects. Cool music and it's still a fun blast overall. Okay, so what are my overall thoughts on this compilation? Well, putting it like bluntly, it's excellent. I just don't know what else to say about it. The archive material, the history section and the menus are excellent. You should seriously go through there and read all the stuff about all the games, the little tidbits, the making of some of them, the kind of like flyers, everything is just, it's so well done. Like really they went out of their way on this one to really like give you like a rich history of the games that they were showcasing. The games themselves is not going to appeal to everybody, I'll just let you know that. There's a lot of really retro arcade games in here, which I thought was freaking cool. If you're not into that kind of thing, like early 80s stuff, then there's going to be a whole bunch here that you're probably not going to like. If you are a fan of that, you're going to love it. Also, I think the selection of games is quite excellent as well. Like I said earlier, most of these games have never been released in any sort of form anyway. But this collection, even though it's an SNK collection, you're not getting any of the King of the Fighters, you're not getting any of the stuff that SNK has released many times over on many other compilations. We've seen all those, we've seen Metal Slug 1000 times. Those are excellent games, but this is actually like the roots of SNK, and you can see where a lot of their games started from in this compilation. It's really cool. Make sure you get all the DLC packs as well. That adds like tons of extra games like Beastbusters and Time Soldiers and all cool stuff like that. This compilation is also available as of making this video on the PS4 and the Switch, so you can check them out that way. And thanks for joining me, Bastish B, at 64K. If you could like and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.